is a character designer, and you might have seen his character designs in a film called Klaus. So in 1999, you were in the summer training internship program in character animation for Disney's feature animation in Paris. Is that how you first got into animation?
Just in the middle, halfway through of my studies at the university, and they were offering that summership program there in Paris at the feature animation studio there. That was a really short program. That was just for 2 weeks, actually. And but I was studying already traditional animation. That was what I wanted to do, to be a traditional animator. And but it was pretty hard back then during that time because there was, no internet. That was that time still where we had no internet. And so it was really hard to get in contact with international artists, especially on that level that Disney had. So I knew, okay, the studios are there in the US and Florida and California. But then I learned, okay, there's a studio in Paris as well, and they're offering that. Why not reaching out to them? So I reached out to them with my first short that I did at the university, and they said, yeah, okay, you want to come over for 2 weeks? And so back then I didn't have any idea or any wish of pursuing a career in character design. I wanted to go for animation. And there I met, besides all those amazing artists, they were just finishing up Tarzan at that time. So Glenn Keane was still at the studio. And so they were ramping up for Treasure Planet. The studio was filled with incredible European artists, draftsmen that I've never seen before. And then my personal mentor, because every intern got a personal mentor there. And my personal mentor was Borja Montoro. That's a Spanish animator and well-known character designer nowadays. And that gave me the first impression of how a big studio works, how the work ethic is. Anything that was just the peak of the iceberg that I could see in those 2 weeks, actually. Oh, and they gave me an assignment, and I was really struggling with that assignment, but I didn't really care. I just wanted to get as much information and as much help and as much training that I could get for those 2 weeks from those amazing artists there. Yeah.
Yeah. So you start off in animation, and then what got you interested more into character design?
Because then after that internship, I went back to university. I studied 2 years more, and then I graduated with my diploma short film. And back then, that was around 2021, 22. As you know, all that CGI came up, and that was state of the art. And I have to confess, I really skipped CGI back then at university because it was still somehow new. We didn't have all the equipment, the software whatsoever, not even the teachers that could give us the first idea of, okay, that might be the future in animation. And so I stood there with my portfolio, with my traditional animated short, and found out that there's not much going on in 2D animation anymore, even here in Europe. But I could reach out to a production in Spain. I knew that they were producing a 2D feature, which I found really interesting style-wise as well. So I met the director and the producer, and I showed them my portfolio and my short, and they were really interested. And they gave me an offer as an animator. And it was kind of bit of shocking to me because that was my really first professional offer. And then I thought, oh, well, I had no experience working professionally as an animator. And as far as I saw that the characters were pretty demanding drawing them. So I told them, well, let me start in cleanup just to get familiar with the characters. And then after maybe a few weeks, I could start working as an animator. Just give me that time, if that is possible. And they did that. So I started as an assistant, cleaning up the key animation, and I learned so much there. So actually, I kept on working there for 10 months in the cleanup department because it was really hard for them as well to find experienced cleanup artists. So they were happy to have me there as well, part of the cleanup team. And I felt okay with that. But the director of that movie, he was already working on the next feature. That he was planning to do that as a CGI feature. And since I had a lot of character designs already in my portfolio, because I always loved to draw characters. Nevertheless, I was more interested in animation, but if I'm animating, I have to draw characters at least. So, and so he knew that I had a soft spot in designing characters. And so, and then he was just asking me if I would be interested in doing some first scribbles for his next feature. I said, yeah, why not? Because somehow I found out, oh, that's cool, that's CG, and that might be more or less the future that is awaiting there, that's looming up. And I could maybe still draw for a CGI feature, maybe not animating, but I could draw. That was as well something that I wanted to do, still keep on going drawing. And yeah, so I did that. And yeah, and the rest is, let's say, history or whatever. So I never went back to animate any character or doing assistant work for animation. So I stayed there in pre-production and doing character design.
When you're designing a character, what questions do you ask yourself, or what do you think about when you're coming up with a character design?
When I'm designing for a project, of course, what I really divide at that moment, of course, I got all the information, most of the information I got from the script. And then on top, I would need to get more information from the director, from the production designer, from the art director, whoever is involved. Most, of course, the first person to go for is the director, because it is his or her version or vision that I would need to follow. But then, since you see the word character design, so these are two words that I'm really splitting as well in my workflow. So there's the design part that is really how the character looks. There, I would need to follow all what I know about shape language, the perception of shapes. Every shape got a different meaning, maybe that you can dial into your design then later. Then what makes a design interesting, the contrast, big shapes, small shapes, a lot of lines, less lines, whatsoever. So this is my toolkit design-wise. And then I have the word character. That means the personality, right? So there I need to trust my empathy. I need to really understand the character. I need to understand why that character is doing that and that and that in the story, and what's their what's the power behind that, or what's the idea behind that. And so I have those two things, and then I have to merge these And then I see, okay, I got this kind of character. What kind of shapes may give me the chance to really illustrate that? What's and because I'm really the first one most of the times that is taking the written word or the character description and have to put that on paper just to bring it in a shape, right? In a visual appearance. And so those are the first things that I really approach is the personality. What's the personality, and then getting into my toolkit with all the shape languages and what I know about graphic solutions for different things. And then I'm mixing that up and try to cook something on paper that might fit to that really specific character that I need to design.
Do you do a lot of research? Like, and what
No,
kind of
of course.
research do you do?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Besides all the information that I'm getting from the script and from the producer and from the director, of course, I'm doing my own research because maybe it's a story like Klaus. It is set in the late 19th century, so I need to know the subject matter. I need to know what the people were wearing, what's the clothing, and so on and so on. And it is set in Scandinavia, so I can't go there and put them just random clothes on, right? So it had to be a bit grounded. And of course, that might be, research can be everything. Of course, the first thing that you go, okay, I look for pictures. The second thing that I'm going as well always for is music. What music can bring me into a certain mood that gives me when I'm reading the story or when I try to picture that character. So I look for that music that really push me into an emotional setting. And then it can be as well the smell that can inspire you. For example, for Klaus, we have those clan families. So we have the Crumbs and the Ellingbows, and the leader of the Ellingbows is that really chubby guy. And when I was reading the script, I had somehow the feeling that this guy is somehow smelling like an onion. So he's not really taking care of himself. So, and then, of course, and that influenced somehow the design, because if you are really boiling down his design shape, it has a shape of an onion. And yeah, sometimes something like this can give you great ideas. So I would always consider everything when it comes to research.
I tell my students that if they're coming up with this character, maybe think of like people in their lives that they know, they have a relative that, maybe you can take some of their personality and put it in your, try to come up with that.
Exactly. And that's what I said in the beginning. It is all about empathy. So, and empathy can be as well related to people that you know and that you think, oh, look, this is my old uncle that is coming always for Christmas, for the Christmas party, to the family reunion, and got really drunk in the end. So maybe so you can dial in those little experiences, because it is like in music or whatever, life gives you a lot of inspiration, and you should draw from that. And I would always recommend not only focus on those social network things and whatever, just open up your horizon and go out on the street. And sometimes it's just when I'm designing for my own, which is nowadays really rare that I have the time. But when I'm doing that, I can get inspired just maybe by a conversation that I'm listening there in the queue at the supermarket, right, between two people, and I thought, oh, that's a funny conversation. Or how weird is that setup here? So, and maybe that I'm just trying to memorize that then later when I'm sitting down at my drawing board.
Do you still keep a sketchbook or to work up ideas, or how do you do
No, not
that?
really.
No.
No, not really. No, no. I did that back in university. Um, but now I found out that what I said is just like being really open and trying to work with what we got here
Mm-hmm.
with the brain. So I'm trying, even if I see people on the street that might be interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and just trying to link them with a certain feeling that I get in that moment. So, or with a certain look, if I see a guy with really crazy hair, then I'm thinking of that. Okay, let's memorize that guy. Stare a bit longer at that guy, and just maybe put that note in your head or spaghetti hair or whatever, right? So something like this. So I really try to work here, and I think that's a good exercise. And I,
So, what advice would you give artists trying to develop their skill set?
well, it's all about drawing, and and um, and you have to approach drawing that way. That don't think that if you're drawing maybe 2 sheets full of heads or faces or whatever, then you know how to draw a face or a head. It's not about that. Don't measure it with numbers or whatever. It's like draw because you love to draw and you love to learn how to draw, for example, hands or heads, but give you the time of exploring it. And there's no recipe, I would say. It is all about analyzing it, understanding it. I think that's the most important thing, to understand what you're drawing here. To and going back again, when I have to draw animals, I have to understand that animal. I have to know a bit more than just the outer shape. I need to know the anatomy and how that whole thing works. And so, in drawing constantly, um, playing and being bold, playing around with shapes, learning that how I can combine different shapes, what can I do, playing with sizes, um, playing with lines, playing with contrast, not only within one character design, but maybe if you have a cast 4 or 5 characters, then you put them in a lineup. Look what kind of nice contrast I have in my little cast that I have maybe for my short or whatever. So every character should have its own silhouette. And so all this, I think, is super important. Learn to observe. You need to observe a lot. Um, and be patient, I think. Yeah. It takes time, takes a long time to master something. And even maybe you end up, or you find yourself in a dead end somewhere. There's always, or in a drawing blog, or in a drawing, what's that name? Then when you don't feel like inspired or whatever, just go through and draw it away, let's say, just draw silly things, and not, and that is as well, but that comes later, pushing yourself out of the comfort zone, out of what you're drawing always, right? Out of that formula of drawing faces, eyes. Try to be versatile. Try to learn that.
So, what advice would you give students interested in getting into character design or visual development?
And now, for character design, I would say, because it is such a niche thing in a production of an animated movie. Let's say now, let's look at the animation industry. Um, so it is really hard to start right away as a character designer. Look at me. I started in cleanup, and character design was not really my cup of tea at that time. But I somehow liked it, but I didn't really consider it as a career. So therefore, you need to enter somewhere in visual development, let's say, and then if you feel like, yeah, I'm more interested in characters, then try to sneak into, if you have the chance to work at a studio, then try to reach out to the designer, to the character designer, to the supervisor there, show your stuff. But because it's such a niche thing, you need to get through the big door and then enter through the smaller one that is back there. I think that's the best thing. And make connections. Because nowadays, I think there's so many, look at Instagram, look at all the social media, look at ArtStation. It is, the level is so high, let's say that the just the starting level is really high already, way, way higher than 20 years ago when I was starting out. So make sure that somehow you are somewhere at that level that you can reach, but then go the extra mile and get out of that. Stand a bit higher there. And that you can do in doing more, pushing yourself out of the comfort zone, or as well, that's the most important thing as well, do connections. Go to those conventions, Lightbox, CTN, you name it. And don't be shy, just go there, say hello, hey, I'm here, can you take a look at my stuff? And because maybe you can have a rock star portfolio, but you don't know anybody. So it's like, but maybe you have a good portfolio, but you know a lot of people, and there you might get easier job, right? So it's like, and because I like those conventions, because there you have that access that I was really looking for when I was studying. It was really hard back then to say hello to all those professionals that maybe work already for decades in the industry, and it's so easy to do that there. It's just saying, hey, hello, my name is so and so. May I show you something? I'm working on that, and I would love to do more character design, and what kind of advice you can give me. And so it is, yeah. I know it is not that easy to do that somehow, but you will not regret that.
Well, thank you for coming on Animated Educated. I want to really thank you for sharing your time and letting us know, what you've done as a character designer. So
yeah, thank you. I have to thank you. It was a real pleasure to do that.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Torsten Schrank, character designer of Klaus and other films that you might have seen. And if you enjoyed this interview in any way, you can press that button right there to subscribe, or you can scroll down and see a whole bunch of more interviews and things, or you can take a look at these two videos here. They're pretty good. And we'll see you next time on Animated Educated.